Welcome back to the second half of our episode debunking the angry astronaut's claims with regards to his opinion about Jeff Bezos' claim that Everest would be a garden paradise compared to living on Mars. If you found this episode first, you're coming in halfway through. In the first half, we dissected Angry's opening statements and had a discussion about the Martian habitat. We also touched on Angry's thoughts about aquaponics on Mars, but we've already covered that in detail in prior episodes. That brings us up to part 3 of his presentation, so if you're all caught up, let's dive into it. Around the 20-minute mark, Angry introduces a spacesuit concept and its creator, Professor David Newman. Newman was a deputy administrator at NASA for 18 months under Obama, and she has a PhD in aerospace biomedical engineering. Angry has his nose out of joint because he thinks NASA hasn't given her concept enough funding or consideration.
It still requires a little bit more research, a little bit more investment from NASA, which of course they haven't given to MIT because they're idiots.
But here's the story of that suit. The biosuit, as it's called, has been in development since prior to 2007, appearing in a CNET article in October of 2007 and in the IEEE Spectrum newsfeed in June of 2009, looking almost exactly as it does now. In fact, Newman first received funding from NASA for her biosuit in the year 2000, and that initial funding round ran through 2005. That dates this concept at over 21 years old. Children born at the same time as this idea are now preparing to graduate college. Various articles also state Newman's research was funded by NASA and MIT. The biosuit is described as an experimental space activity suit under construction at MIT, under her direction, with the support of NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts. The biosuit is designed to be skin-tight, to use compression of the suit instead of pressure in the suit to provide the necessary atmospheric pressures for the astronaut wearing it. If NASA has any plans of using this suit, they certainly have not demonstrated that interest in their most recent lineups of the new EVA suits. There's a couple reasons why that might be. The suits used by astronauts will have to be able to accommodate many of the body functions of an astronaut who is walking on the surface of another planet. Wicking away sweat while keeping the body at the right temperature is a big deal. Having to deal with bathroom emergencies would also be high on the list. Pretty sure the model donning the biosuit in this unveiling isn't wearing an astro diaper. But the biggest shortfall this suit appears to have is that it has no built-in life support system. In this article, available on the NASA website, Newman outlines her plans to tap the diver community to create a modular life support system for the biosuit, which indicates they haven't even started that aspect of the design yet. And this is now 21 years into this project. According to Angry, rather than carry your oxygen on your back like every other astronaut, diver, and fireman out there, he's under the impression that NASA is about to approve the Boston Dynamics Spot robot dog to carry the tanks for these people. Here's his clip making that claim.
And what about your oxygen supply? Well, you could carry it yourself, or as NASA is just about to approve, you can have a robot carry it for you, like the Boston Dynamics Zeus.
First, that is not going to be more convenient by any stretch. Having your suit tethered to a robot seems like a giant step backwards for functionality and ease of movement. Second, these robot dogs are not cheap. They start at about $75,000, and the Zeus robot at SpaceX had another $100,000 worth of upgrades added to it. Plus, their ability to function in an irradiated environment of electrostatic dust would be questionable. If the thing breaks down when you're on an excursion, it'll weigh about 65 pounds or 32.5 kilos plus your air tanks for when you have to carry it back to your habitat for repairs. So although the suit looks pretty, especially given the blonde model that Newman squeezed into it, it would appear she has failed to bring this project to a reasonable state of completion for NASA consideration, and they've moved on to better, more complete, and self-contained designs like the XEMU and the Z2, which have also recently been covered in detail in the MIT review. One of the final notes is that when you go back to the Martian habitats, there are EVA suits right in the diagrams. These suits are meant to be accessible through the walls of the habitat to avoid toxic dust collection inside the structure, because that is definitely going to be a concern. Newman's biosuit would not have that functionality, so regular use of an airlock would be required instead, and that will contaminate the interior compartment. There's a lot more to a spacesuit than simply making it form-fitting and pressurized. Notice all the required components in these diagrams from the other EVA suit, and you'll see that the biosuit might look better, but it's certainly not a suitable replacement system for what is known to work. One of the more laughable arguments that Angry and Newman use against other EVA suits is that in the event of a puncture, they think that the astronaut in a heavier EVA suit would have to awkwardly run back to the lab, while the biosuit astronaut could simply tape up the hole. Newsflash, astronauts already carry several kinds of tape with them for such emergencies. One of them is called Captain, and is rated for use between -269 and +400 degrees Celsius. It's the same stuff used by Navy SEALs to patch inflatable rafts, and it has been used on the ISS for temporary patching of micrometeorite strikes. Seems that, once again, Angry didn't do his homework before releasing his opinion. This suit isn't intentionally being overlooked by NASA, but in 21 years of development, Newman has failed to present a viable self-contained suit. And now that she has been named the new director for MIT's Media Lab starting July 1st of 2021, her plate is going to be kind of full. So we wouldn't expect too much more coverage of the biosuit, which has not been featured in any mainstream news articles since 2019. In part 4 of his presentation, Angry asked this question: what are we going to do on Mars?
And then the final question, what do we do? Well, that's pretty damn obvious. How about watch a blue sunset, courtesy of the carbon dioxide atmosphere that we find so formidable? It can also be beautiful, or just explore this unique planet.
So we're going to watch beautiful sunsets. Those happen once a day. And explore the surface of Mars. Sure we are. The circumference of Mars around the equator is 21,297 kilometers. In terms of travel on Earth, that would be in the same neighborhood as walking from Cape Town, South Africa to Magadan, Russia, along what has been determined to be Earth's longest walkable road. So on Mars, each degree of longitude and latitude is right around the 60-kilometer mark. Meaning, going to see all the sites that Angry outlined in the back half of his video, without having the benefit of mass transportation such as buses or planes, will not be a day outing for an afternoon picnic. Let's just show some of the distances in between all these landmarks so you can get a better idea how big Mars actually is. On this map, let's check our travel distances to all the places that you'll never see on Mars from a relatively central point, at 0 lat 0 long, and all stats are going to be taken from Google Mars. Measuring from 0, 0, Hydrotis Chaos is right around 2,125 kilometers away. Nice easy hike. Valles Marineris, where Angry thinks the first cities should go on Mars, is around 3,650 kilometers away. The northern ice cap that Angry wants to fly over in a balloon would be a 5,300 kilometer journey, just as the southern pole would be. Martha Valles is 1,665 kilometers away. Becquerel Crater, 1,400 and change. Cassi Valles is 4,165 clicks. Rabe Crater, 3,350. Hebe's Chasma, 4,560. Olympus Mons, 8,115 kilometers, which is pretty much the same as a round trip from LA to New Jersey. Prometheus Planum in the deep south is 7,180 kilometers away. Gala Crater is 3,575 kilometers away, and the Ione Chaos is the closest to our reference point at 1,065 clicks. Now, if you're curious about where we've landed on Mars to date, and we actually have on-the-ground data for, here are the NASA rover locations. In 1996, Pathfinder and Sojourner landed at Ares Vallis. In January of 2004, Spirit landed at the Gusev Impact Crater, and Opportunity landed 3 weeks later on the other side of the planet at Meridiani Planum. And just this year, Perseverance carried the helicopter Ingenuity to the Jezero Crater. All of these sites are within 20 degrees of the Martian equator, yet we seem to think we have all the information we need about the poles. So it's pretty obvious that nobody is going to be going on day tours to most of those features. And flying in a balloon over the northern ice cap, as Angry suggested? Good luck. That balloon would require an 11,000 kilometer range. Now, if you're not going to be visiting those sites, and you're not, what are you going to be looking at? Well, Angry thinks that the Valles Marineris is the place to set up shop. So you're going to be looking at steep canyon walls of regolith for the rest of your truncated days. Additionally, because the Martian equivalent of the Grand Canyon is about 7,000 meters deep, your ability to create energy from solar panels at that location is going to be greatly hindered comparing to being out on an open plain. So now would be a great time to remember the claims that Angry made at the beginning of his video.
Living on Mars would not be a living hell, and I am going to prove that to you right now.
That was his stated goal, to prove that Mars was more livable than Everest. Was he successful in proving that Mars is a better place to live? Honestly, as far as we can tell, he never even addressed the topic matter. What did he do? He showed you a prototype habitat that can't be built on Mars by a company who has apparently ghosted their Indiegogo supporters. He demonstrated he doesn't know what he's talking about on the subject of aquaponics. He got mad at NASA for not doing something they actually did do 21 years ago when they funded Newman's biosuit, and reaffirmed that you do need some sort of suit to survive on Mars. And he showed you all the places you'll never go if you ever land on Mars. So all in all, this was a complete fail. But Angry had one more ridiculous statement to make with regards to children that might be born on Mars.
Children who are born there, who grow up in 1/3 gravity and can never go to Earth as a result. They may find themselves banned forever from Earth, but then they have the rest of the solar system to pick from. So there's a lot of adventure for Martian children in the future.
They'll have the rest of the solar system to pick from. How is that? Every planet's going to have its own gravity, its own radiation profile. They're not going to have personal spaceships, and they're not going to be traveling between moons. If, as parents of children born on Mars, you have to evacuate the planet for any reason, and you cannot take your children back to Earth with you because they will not be able to survive on Earth, that would be the very definition of hell. Most, if not all parents, would stay behind and die with their kids as the air, water, and food ran out, and that endgame would be an absolute nightmare scenario. As for having the rest of the solar system to pick from, time for a reality check. The next closest planet to Mars heading away from the Sun is Jupiter. Jupiter's mean orbital distance from the Sun is 778 million kilometers. Mars's orbit is an average of 228 million kilometers, compared to Earth at 150 million kilometers. So Jupiter is 3 times the distance from the Sun compared to Mars. And from Earth traveling to Jupiter, that's a factor of 10 times longer than a trip to Mars. That's assuming that the planets are in a decent proximity to each other, with a reasonable transfer orbit. Jupiter had 79 moons at last count, so many they don't even have names for 26 of them. The 4 biggest moons closest to the gas giant are called the Galilean moons. Their names are Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Astronomers have fantasized about the exploration of these moons with an eye to colonizing them. Callisto is the favorite choice with only 12 times the radiation experienced on Earth, but the other 3 moons are well within Jupiter's extreme radiation field. Io is hit so hard by these radiation belts that it loses a ton of material into space every second. Safe to say, Io is not going to be a vacation destination anytime in the future. And if none of these colonization candidates are suitable, the next stop will be the 83 moons of Saturn, including Enceladus and Titan. But they are another 700 million kilometers away from Jupiter, orbiting the Sun at 1.4 billion kilometers mean orbit. So, no, Angry, these children of Mars will not have the rest of the solar system as their playground. To even suggest it as some form of consolation for not being able to visit or return to Earth with their parents is so naive it's disturbing. And to back up a step, who's to say that humans can procreate on Mars? That's going to be a topic for another time. Now we're pretty much done with the claims made by Angry, so we're going to speak in very general terms here. No matter who is suggesting it, no matter who is promising it, whatever living solution, crop raising paradigm, in situ propellant equipment, energy generators, PPE, even societal structure that Martian colonies intend to use has to be tested on Earth first. If they can't land in Antarctica or on Everest and build habitats, create energy, and grow enough food to survive without any form of intervention for 3 years, they won't be able to do it on Mars, plain and simple. Both Everest and Antarctica have air, ice, and gravity. They are warmer than Mars. Antarctica will have a similar seasonal daylight ratio to the poles of Mars, where the water ice deposits have been spotted, since Mars has seasons over the course of an orbit of the Sun due to the tilt of the planet. But on Mars, of course, the seasons are more than twice as long. Biosphere 2, which we have spoken about before, took 8 people and put them inside a 3-acre garden paradise that was as close to perfect as engineers could make it in the early 90s. And those people were ready to kill each other when they were finally released because they were starving. Both in terms of engineering capability and with regards to mental health, these experiments need to happen on Earth before we try exporting them to another planet. Once they perfect their procedures and paradigms on Earth, they can ship them to the Moon and see how they work out there, where radiation is going to play a much greater role in how people and equipment are able to cope. Then, once those people on the Moon can prove self-sufficiency, agencies can start thinking about sending small excursion parties to Mars with plans for their safe return. If mission architects don't have a plan for their astronaut survival, they can feel free to take the astronauts' place and do the dying themselves. But for anyone to think we can go directly from our present position of being unable to land people on the moon straight to planting self-sustaining cities and subdivisions on Mars is fooling themselves and their followers into believing a delusional fantasy. Unfortunately, there are far too many people and news outlets and YouTube channels cashing in on those fantasies, which all feed that narrative. And this frenzy of hype has now created a feedback loop of nonsensical thinking which is not doing anybody any good, and is not getting us any closer to these goals. If only a team had dedicated themselves to creating such a step-by-step roadmap that laid out how humans might actually get safely to Mars, that would most likely be something that most people interested in space exploration could get behind. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Common Sense Skeptic. We weren't expecting it to be quite this long, but once you start looking into things, you never know what you're going to find. Special thanks this week going out to our newest Patreon supporters, Olga Kruglova, Rafe, Chase Malachek, Thomas Ramp, Gustavo Puma, JB, Philip Barchat, and Philippe Simpson. And a special welcome to the 5,000 people who have joined our channel in the past 2 weeks. Our numbers are climbing steadily as we approach our first year anniversary on July 1st, and it would really be something if we could hit 20,000 in the next 5 weeks. If you'd like to help us hit that goal, make sure you're subscribed, like the videos, share them with your friends, and of course hit the notification bell so that you'll know when the Common Sense Skeptic returns.